in 2022. I was keen to get into tech, just focused on the continent. I was living in Australia at the time. I was just like talking to people globally, like, hey, I'm on the continent, I'm learning about tech in Africa. Like, what are the things you want to learn about, and how do you like receiving information? I just started testing, like every day for like 3 months. I was sitting down writing an article.
So we're just like shooting. I think the first year I probably did like maybe like 30 something videos.
I was in DC last year and I wanted to do an event, but I wasn't sure. And I just sort of put it up on the newsletter, and someone was like, I got you. And she like actually organized the venue, helped out with like all the catering and stuff. And I just did the distribution.
If you stay basic forever, I think that's a cap. But by the time you begin to refine the content, and sometimes quality is not even like with video, it's not even just like the equipment, sometimes also the style.
There's a bar where like you have to meet a certain bar of quality, right? But then like after that, it doesn't matter. Like what matters more is tone and uniqueness of the content and the person. Hey there, I'm Caleb, the CEO of a company called Tech Safari, covering tech across Africa and building community and events across the continent and globally. And I'm also the CEO of a company called Flywheel, which is a growth agency helping startups scale and hit the next level of growth through content, community, and audience building.
I don't know what this series is called or anything. Maybe we're doing it for Flywheel instead of.
Yeah, this is just like a creator jam or something.
Yeah, creator jam. That's a nice one.
And it's, just jamming.
Do you want to do the intro?
Cool creator jam. All right, this is the first in TCTV's creator jam series, where she just hangs out with cool creators that she likes. And we shoot the shit a bit about what it's like building an audience and being creators, building businesses out of that.
Okay, that was fantastic. I don't know how to do anything. So let's talk about Tech Safari and Founders Connect. We're going to talk about both. I don't do enough of talking about how to build the audience, but I think if you look at where we are right now, we're building businesses out of content, right? So when I started Founders Connect, I tell people a lot that it was just me shooting videos. And then one day I realized, we could do events because they're actually real people. And it sounds very cliche, but it was a transformation in my mind where I went from just knowing that I had these numbers and this X number of subscribers and followers on all of the channel to realizing there were like 800, 1,000 people that were actually show up at an event that I did. And that was a massive shift. And then now realizing, I can actually make money from this. This is actually like a revenue stream. And then there are other things that kind of come after that.
Yeah.
And now thinking about, okay, what is the bigger picture where content is like the entry point and content is the base and how we build the audience. But there are many other things that can come out of that audience. That's for me. But I've seen you do the same thing as well, right? You do events every week. But it's not just events. Like you have the fund as well, the syndicate fund as well. Yeah. You're building like an agency at the moment as well called Flywheel. So there's a whole, there are multiple companies, like your events is a different company. Flywheel at the agency is a different thing. But all of this started because you decided to start writing on LinkedIn, right? So what was the journey to like building an audience, and when did it shift from I'm just creating content, but this audience are actually people that I could actually monetize?
Yeah, so I basically sat in I treat it a lot like building a startup, right? When you build a startup, you're in this phase of just scrambling around, talking to everyone you can, researching every day, seeing what's out there, building like connections, and then just testing. So similar, like I spent a bunch of time, I was traveling around the continent, around Africa in 2022, and I was keen to get into tech, just focused on the continent. I was living in Australia at the time, and I was just like talking to people globally, like, hey, I'm on the continent, I'm learning about tech in Africa. Like, what are the things you want to learn about, and how do you like receiving information? So after like understanding, this sort of tone, this sort of language, this sort of like information is important, I just started testing like every day for like 3 months. I was sitting down writing an article, posting it, seeing how it would go.
So you wrote every day for 3 months?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I moved back in with my parents. They live in this city called Canberra in Australia. It's like super boring. Like none of my friends are there. I was just like, all right, I'm doing this. I'm gonna like leave the company I'm at. I'm gonna just sit down for 3 months and give this a shot. If it fails, I'm gonna get a job. Like I'll be boring. I'll go to like normal life. And if it works out, then like let's see what happens. So for me, it wasn't like a long-term like play. It was like, is there something here? And what I stumbled on was this idea that Africa has like a really unique story in tech, and a unique like a lot of very different stories on different, depending on like where you are, right? So like how we interact with mobile money or tech in Kenya is super different to Nigeria, but it's generally bundled. And so how do you give the continent's tech stories like uniqueness when you tell the story and a perspective which lets everyone access it was the go, and make it really fun. You know, how do you do it in a way that like everyone can understand and enjoys reading it? So like in the beginning, the test for our content was my brother, who was 16 at the time, would read every article I'd post. And if he got bored, he'd tell me, and I'd have to rewrite it until like, that's cool.
That's actually cool.
That's funny. Like, yeah. And I'd like put memes in it. I'd like put GIFs and stuff so people would get it. And like, he was like, "Oh, that's actually pretty funny, Caleb. Yeah, you should post it." I was like, "Yeah, cool." And those would do really well. And people got to know sort of my personality.
Did you start from LinkedIn or did you start from the newsletter?
It started on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the newsletter came. Yeah. Yeah, so that's how we started building it. And then I think like to me, like building the audience came really just from that consistency of every like 3 months, every day post. And yeah, and I've just continued that. Like we haven't stopped posting. Like I think the
Do you
longest...
post every day?
No. I have at least twice a week. And I haven't had like, I've had 1 week since I started where I didn't post for a full week. And it just felt wrong. But like, but that's it. It's consistency and understanding your audience.
Yeah.
Was how we did it. Yeah.
I think it was the same thing for me as well, because I was telling you just before we started this video that when I started, I used to shoot like 7 content in a day. And it was just like back to back, like at least once every month, I would shoot like 5 to 7 content. And that's like 5 weeks, right? Because it was long form video, we decided to do, okay, once every week at least. So we're just like shooting. I think the first year, I probably did like maybe like 30 something videos. And then the next year was the same thing. And so when I tell people now that I've done like almost 100 interviews, it sounds like, oh my God, 100 interviews. But it was true because the first 2 years, I think I did 70% in the first 2 years. And it was just like back to backs. And before I know what it was, I'd created this repository of tech stories that nobody else had. So when people are looking for, if you're searching for like 2D founders, you'll probably find my video, right? At least one of them. And so the audience just began to grow from that. Okay, it's the same thing. And I noticed that once you do something like consistently, I think it's a hack for content creation. If you want to figure out if your content will do well, just try it with consistency.
Yeah.
Like I've seen, like I think Stellem was the first person that did that was years ago, where he just started to make a video on Instagram every day for like 30 days. I've seen people who was like, I would do like a 90 days challenge. And because people begin to, and it's the algorithm, right? Like the more content that you post, the more it pushes your content because there's more. And then when somebody like randomly finds you and they now have a lot of things to read, then they spend like 30 minutes, 1 hour, and yes, they're following because a lot of content. So I think it was really the same thing as well. Just consistently doing the same thing for months, or in my case for years, and eventually it sticks in people's mind that, oh, this is what this channel is for, this is what this person is doing. So you build that brand, and then you look back and realize, damn, I have like 50,000 followers on LinkedIn.
Totally.
It's always crazy for me to when I actually think about it like that.
And the other interesting thing is that like audiences usually stick around if you're consistent. So it's a bit like, you know how as a startup you acquire a customer and they have a lifetime value. It's like very similar in that if I acquire a reader who actually enjoys the content, they stick around. Yeah. So like these things actually do grow exponentially.
It does.
The more that you get these readers, the more they stay on, the more they share it, and then it sort of goes like this.
Yeah. It keeps growing. I've seen people recently who are like, I've been following you since Ezra's video, which is like video number 2, and I'm in almost video 100.
Yeah.
Or like since I doing it in like 2020, and I'm like, damn, you guys are actually here for the journey. And they're the ones who are now attending my events, right? So for instance, when I was in Toronto, literally like last week, a lot of the people that I met, that I knew, were people that I knew years ago. Like, I don't think I met people that I knew last year. It was like, oh, I knew you 3 years ago. I knew you 4 years ago. And I've been following your journey. I've watched every episode of Founders Connect. I don't always believe people when they tell me that. But it's just so good to know that when you now begin to grow, they're likely going to be the first people to patronize you because they feel like they've been part of your journey as a creator as well. And they really connect because nobody stays with you if they don't like your content, right? So when they stay, they're like, whatever you're doing, I'm going to be there. You're going to do an event, I'm going to be there. Like, you're probably express the same thing where I've seen people who, last year, there was a guy that came for my Lagos event, and then 6 weeks later, he was in London event.
That's sick.
This year, there was somebody who came for the Lagos event, and then 3 months later, he's in Toronto event. And he's like, oh, he just moved and he wants to be here again. So they kind of like go with you as you kind of like begin to build a business, so like other things begin to come out of the content. So
That's so cool. You know, I get excited every time we have, like every time someone's like, I've been reading since since January or like February last year. I'm like, yo, that's when we started. Like, you're day one. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm always like, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And, like, I really love those conversations where people are like, oh yeah, I've been around since the beginning, and those initial readers are super exciting when I see that.
Yeah. So we talked about consistency, right? Like the more you put out content, just the more people you attract, and the more an algorithm of any platform favors you. And then we talked about the lifetime value of your audience. So you might start with like 100 audience, but they stay with you, then that begin to share your content. So they help you attract other users, and then they're helping you build the audience because you're staying. Is there any other factor that you think has contributed to building, like, because you have such a big audience, Caleb? What else do you think has contributed to that?
Well, okay, so there's probably two other things I can think of. The first is like, the second is, or the third, I guess, is it's not just about putting out a lot of content. It's about having a specific tone or like style or way that you communicate.
That's different from everybody else.
Exactly, and unique to you.
Yeah.
And I think the more unique to you it is, the better. Like, the more it sounds like actually how Peace talks, the better. And the more it sounds like how Caleb actually would crack a joke, you know? Or like, you know, put a meme up, like the better, because people actually hear and see me.
Yeah.
And that's extremely valuable because there is so much content out there. Like, and there is like an accelerating amount of content with AI as well. Everyone's posting content, but what is a differentiator is not even, it's not
It's
quality.
not the topic or the stuff, it's,
Like, quality is important. There's like a bar, we're finding, especially as we do this for other people, like there's a bar where like you have to meet a certain bar of quality, right? But then like after that, it doesn't matter. Like, what matters more is tone and uniqueness of the content and the person. So it's not even like a quality question. It's like actually how unique is your voice.
Fun fact, do you know that Founders Connect is not my first podcast? Yes. In 2019, my friend and I started the Vulnerability podcast where we just talked about real stuff. And then a year or so later, the idea for Founders Connect came, and boom, here we are. It's a pretty wild journey, right? I feel like I've done so many things. Anyway, what has really worked for me, or what works for me then, was starting small, using what I had. No fancy equipment, at least then. No massive strategy. One episode at a time, one guest at a time, just consistency and focus that compounds over time. But I also had a community. I had my friend Steven, who gave me like a lot of tips and tricks, Joyce, who had a lot of support. And so you don't have to do it alone, right? Which is why I'm excited to share a new resource from HubSpot, one of my favorite people. It is the podcast starter kit, and it contains a lot of strategies and a lot of information that I wish I had when I was starting out, even stuff that's still relevant to me to today, like recording and editing basics, how to grow your audience, how to monetize, what distribution should actually look like, and even how to find your voice and how to find your niche. It's a lot of people talk about starting, which I kind of just did, but what really makes a difference is distribution, and that's my favorite session of, because you need to figure out how to get your content to the right people and grow your actual audience, and publishing doesn't do that for you. It's distribution that does that. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, a video podcast, a blog, or even just starting your content creation journey, this is definitely a resource that you should download. Take it from me. Link in the description below, in my bio. Let's get back to the video. Peace.
And then I think
I do think that quality matters, but I agree with you. Like, I think you can start with like the basic stuff and you still build. But as your audience begins to grow a little bit, I think they also begin to expect a bit more. And there's a place where quality helps you with retention. You don't have to overdo it, but if you stay basic forever, I think that's a cap. But by the time you begin to refine the content, and sometimes quality is not even like with video, it's not even just like the equipment, sometimes also the style and the format and the extra nuance that you add to the conversation. I think that begins to help your audience also not get tired, because they're like, this is actually really cool to watch. Like, you know how you watch a movie and it's like the quality was just good, right? Yeah. Same thing, or you read like a newsletter and you're like, there's no spelling mistake. The paragraphs was, the sentence structure, everything was just really good. I think there's a place that quality helps, but I agree with you. Like, the bar sometimes is just that.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think there's a point where it's diminishing returns. Like, this is pretty good. Like, oh, this is good. Like, this meets the standard, send it, put it out. And I feel like a lot of people, like, especially when I started, I got stuck with, I remember I spent like 4 weeks and I wrote like 10 posts for LinkedIn, which is just so slow now, like to me. Like, that's like 2 days, or like 1 day. But like, I wrote those posts and I sat on them because they weren't perfect. And I just didn't post anything.
Sure.
Like for 4 weeks, like it was insane. And I look at that now, it's like, actually, there's a level where I'm like, this is acceptable, just put it out. And that's important. And then related, number 4 is speed. So when I say speed, it's like, there's that quote, which is, I forgot who it was. It's like this investor or like a founder where it's like, there's no silver bullet. There's just a lot of lead bullets. And it's the idea that like, you just need to shoot a lot of bullets.
Yeah.
Like, and put stuff out there, learn, keep iterating and testing.
And then you begin to find what actually works better, right? Yeah, and then you kind of like just iterate on that one. I agree with that.
Yeah, and reflecting on that. Like,
Yeah.
so we did, 10 tests this month. We tested all this sort of content. What's working, what isn't, remove what's not working, keep doing what is. And it's sort of simple, but like, that is really what leads in. The one interesting thing though around this is that while it is a lot of testing and consistency and all that, it does take one viral post to completely change everything. Like, I remember I was unsure. I was like, okay, Tech Safari, this newsletter is doing okay and like it's growing, it's been nice, but I don't know, like I wasn't sure. This is like 6 weeks in. And then I had this one night, I remember I was at like this, I was meeting my friends at a bar. I was like, okay, quickly post this thing, the story of like this AI tool for education in South Africa. I'll check in on it tomorrow morning. And I woke up and this post had like gathered over 1 million impressions and like 14,000 people had like reacted to it. Our newsletter subscribers went up by 4,000 overnight. I was like, okay, this is real. It's like, this is real. And, and it's like, it's crazy that like everything sort of changed. And so it's interesting because you're trying to do a lot of like consistency tests, learning what works, but you will have these moments which are just exponential. And you're trying to get those as well. Like that.
Yeah, some people get lucky and they get it once, but more people get lucky by just doing a lot of it and then something goes up. And they keep going a lot of it again and something goes up. And there's a lot of it and something goes up. And then the more, because you have a lot of it and something goes up, when you get a lot of new audience, they see a lot of other content. And they're like, oh, this is actually like a consistent, it's not just a one-day wonder. And then those people stay.
Yeah.
So that consistency still helps, but you only get there by the variety. I think something else that we could mention that you kind of already said is the data and the experimenting and not being afraid to just like try multiple things and see, okay, I started with training content. I was just like teaching marketing lessons, business and life lessons. And then Founders Connect happened. I'm like, oh, this is what people like? Cool. I'm going to do as many videos as possible as I can. And you kind of like just begin to understand, okay, this is working better than this one. When we started doing reels on Instagram, that's how Instagram grew. I was just like posting random videos. I was posting on my channel and I said, okay, let's create a different channel for Founders Connect. I want to build its own brand. And then we'll post stuff and it really wouldn't do well. And then we had the idea of let's create reels and we'll just take like a snippet of the entire video and make it 60 seconds. And that's how we did like 20K followers in like a few months. And I'm like,
nice.
So reels actually work as well. So it's that, we've experimented with a bunch of things. We find what works and then we say this works and we just systemize it and kind of like keep going from there. So I think it was just really important to say, okay, there's consistency, there's lifetime value and like sort of the ripple effect. There's the do it as much as you can because like you find those viral moments from it, but it's like pay attention to the data as well. I think that's a cool part. Reflect on action.
Yeah.
Amazing. Any final words on building an audience?
No, I think those are the main things. But it's like it's the most valuable asset I have, and will probably ever have, to be honest.
Interest. Ever have?
Like, in business, yeah. not in life. Like I mean, there's like other relationships I hold closely, but as an asset, it is the most valuable thing anyone can have.
Why?
Because it's like, it's people who know you, trust you, want to support you. Like, we talk about them as an audience, but these are real people.
Real people.
Who you hang out with who are like, hey, I'm invested in your journey. Like, I've been following you. They have the same investment in your journey. The only difference is that you're just like talking about what you're doing publicly.
Yeah.
And, audience is, I'm extremely grateful to my audience. They've actually afforded most of the opportunities. Every time I need something, once I was coming to Nigeria, I was like, I'm going in a few days. How do I get in? Like, how to get my visa? And like, yeah, I got you. Here's your plug, Or like in DC, I was in DC last year and I wanted to do an event, but I wasn't sure. And I just sort of put it up on the newsletter and someone's like, I got you. And she like actually organized the venue, helped out with like all the catering and stuff. And I just did the distribution. And she just wanted to support. So I think like, it's the most valuable asset because it's people who are like committed to you, probably like very cool and like good people to have in your circle anyway. And it goes everywhere with you. Like it doesn't leave once Tech Safari shuts down. Yes,
yeah, I was actually going to add that, but I think that's my favorite part about having an audience because I think my content and how I interact with media has evolved and changed and keeps changing. I've lived many lives, but I noticed that my audience kind of like stay. Like there's somebody that I met at my Toronto event who said, "Peace, you are my teacher," and I was like, "When?" He was like, "When I was doing Wild Fusion training, this was 2017. I was not doing YouTube then, but I mean, we connected with training. I used to post stuff on Instagram, and that's how he followed me and just connected. And so he has gone through Peace as a digital marketing trainer, to Peace when I was doing Women Will and I was organizing events for Women Will by Google. So Peace now doing Farms Connect, now organizing my own events in Toronto and still sticking by me. And so it's like, once people connect with you because you're unique and you kind of like, I like whatever it is that you're doing, they stay. And it's not even about the life cycle of that type of content. It's like your entire life cycle as a human being, where they're able to evolve with you and become like different viewers or audience or customers for the things that you actually do. I think that's the most important part about like just having an audience and having
100%.
followers, because they kind of just stay.
Yeah, and and they're awesome people. Like, they're actually people I want to spend time with because they like us. Like, it's like having friends who you haven't met yet.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like when your friend is like, you guys are gonna be great friends.
Yeah.
They're like, you know it's gonna work. You know.
Yeah.
Like that.
100%.
The last idea I want to put out here on audience is that there's an incredible quote from this guy. I think it's Jeremy Giffen. He's like an investor, and he says that content is the last vestige of the American dream.
The last prestige?
Vestige, like the last like sort of element of the American dream. And the idea is, I can write interesting content and just be sitting anywhere in the world. I could be in Kenya, I can be in Australia, I can be someone who maybe has never like had a job before. But if I write interesting enough content about what I'm doing, then I can get into a room or like invited to dinner with Elon Musk if I wanted to, or whoever else you want, because ideas can move around the world so quickly, and unique ideas or unique perceptions or abilities that come out in content can be so interesting to people that like, hey, I want to talk to you, or like, I want you to help us do this thing. And that's like an example, right, of like, and there are many examples of people who have literally tweeted themselves onto like private like jets, because they have an interesting idea, and that's it. And if you think about that, it's like, it's almost an analogy for anything. Like, if you write interesting enough content about anything, you can probably get into most places. And we've seen so many amazing creators do that. And some not so great creators do that too. Like people creating content that gets them into rooms or like gets them able to do things that they usually could never do.
Yeah. My interesting story for that was speaking at TED.
Yeah.
Because it was from the business curator Googling stuff about African tech. And finding my video and saying, you've done a lot of videos, come speak at TED. And there's random things that happen. I think that's probably just the biggest one right now. Well, it's exactly what you're saying, where there's no barrier because we also have the internet. So you put out something and you never know who is reading it. Like, you can get the opportunities, but sometimes it's just going to the randomest places and actually realizing somebody knows me here because they follow me on LinkedIn or because they watch my YouTube video. And when you then need something in that place, they're very quick to help because they feel like, I know you already, you're my friend, right? I think it's so important. I think Toronto taught me that because I was like, I'm doing an event in a city that I have never been to before. And it was because there are people there that apparently, because I didn't know, but they know Founders Connect. And they're like, oh, Peace is coming, we are going to show up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, will people actually show up? But then like hundreds of people actually do. And you realize, okay, I might be creating content in Lagos or creating content in London or in Nairobi, but there's somebody in Japan who's reading my content, watching my content. And that can become a connection for the next big thing that I want to be able to do in my life.
100%.
Makes sense. Right now, the call is not, how do we just monetize it or build a product to launch the communities? How do we build a community that they feel like this is the most important community that I'm a part of? The way people would read Textify and be like, this is the most important newsletter.
Audience of people who like maybe follow, it's like one way.
Yeah.
Like, it's like
just giving to them.
Following Peace, right? Yeah. And like you're giving me content, I'm interacting with you. But a community is when like different people interact with each other.
Yeah.
And that's what we love to see as well.